Hey, so I've been playing Trek to Yomi, and it is a really flawed game that I still think you should check out, at least if you're a certain type of player. So the gist with this game is it's a smaller, more independent game. It's published by Devolver Digital, seemingly made by a small team. It's out on PlayStation, Xbox Game Pass, and Steam. And if you buy it, it's only like 20 bucks. And I want to show my bias like totally out front, lay my cards. I really like these types of games. If you've been watching this channel for a while, you know what I do here is I just talk about stuff I love. And I'm not totally in love with this game, but I am in love with this type of game. I really like games like this, like Limbo. Inside is one of my favorites. Little Nightmares, Shadow Complex, just like 2D or 2.5D, more modern style games that embrace that old school left to right formula a little bit. And Trek to Yomi definitely caught my eye. I think this was actually first revealed during a PlayStation State of Play, and a lot of people were billing it as Ghosts of Tsushima 2.5D. And I actually pretty much disagree with that comparison. It's much more than that, and not really. But if you like those types of games, those smaller, digestible, experiential 2.5D games, I still think you should trust me on this one and check this one out because it is really stunning. It is really an exercise and a celebration of that like 50s, 60s Japanese cinema, the Kurosawa stuff that people throw around. Now, other games have done this. Other games have also done this cool black and white filter thing here. But the way it's all designed here, the way the camera perspective changes, the way the perspective and it works with the foreground, like sometimes the camera angle will be peering through some trees or through some cracks in the wall, and the way it uses light and dark, like bold dark, like really deep darks, and light that kind of will actually highlight and signify important things in the environment. It really is pretty damn incredible. The film grain actually looks legit. It doesn't look like a cheap filter. This feels like they really put the work in here. And the game can look really damn stunning. From an art direction standpoint, there's just tons of cool details and cool environment design, but also graphically it has the chops. The camera can sometimes get in real close. You can see a lot of your character's details and it can look like a totally different game. Other times the camera can pan out super wide and you can see these vast, incredible environments, and the game keeps up regardless. And experiencing that stuff is awesome. There's music, it's really well done, but it's used very limitedly. There's some really stunning cutscenes, some like a cool kind of bad guy, and a fairly interesting story and plot. It kind of does the whole samurai duty honor type thing, but in a way that gets a little crazy. It's kind of like a descent into chaos. It's really like a trek to hell. Really, it embraces this Japanese folklore, but it does it in a way that's pretty accessible, pretty digestible, and it works for this linear adventure. And I really like how it ends. Now, I'm not spoiling anything, but you can play this game pretty quickly. 4.5 hours was my first playthrough. It's a little challenging, so here and there I got stuck on a couple of parts, a couple of encounters, a couple of bullshit bosses, but I just think it's really creative, and again, I don't think it's like for every type of player. Some people will still call this kind of just a walking simulator because you're just going from left to right, looking at cool things, but I think the experience is worth it if you like this stuff, if you like cinematic stuff, if you like games that do something a little bit different. And I think it mostly like delivered on the promises. Like when you saw the trailer, you were like, oh, cool, stylish Kurosawa game. Awesome. I think the black and white and everything is really good here. Sometimes your view is obscured and it kind of sucks. Like sometimes the game is just too stylized that it can screw you up. But ultimately, that whole thing works for me. What doesn't work for me is the combat. The combat for me is a huge flaw, a really big disappointment. And, you know, it's hard to put my finger on exactly why, but I'm trying my best between here and the Game Ranks video. I get a little bit more technical in the Game Ranks Before You Buy video, but long story short is it just doesn't feel quite right. The input timings are weird, the animation windows and the effects, like nothing lines up quite right to make you really feel like you're always in control. This, along with just like a couple of enemy types, really leads to it feeling really repetitive. Every encounter kind of feels like a rinse repeat type of thing once you figure it out. And it does have moments, like the finishers are really cool. I love the animations. I love pulling off the special things to get more health to keep going. But most of the time, from the parry to just the timing of some of the combos to the actual strike on the enemies, a lot of it feels really, really unsatisfying. And that is a shame because, like I said, every once in a while, it'll be kind of cool, especially when you're doing stuff in a really stylized landscape, like on a bridge over some woods or in a lightning storm or behind paper panels, like paper walls, so you're only seeing your character's silhouette as you're slicing a dude's head off. That should be god tier shit, but because the gameplay is, the combat is just kind of frustrating. It can be nice and challenging sometimes, but sometimes it's really just because you're dealing with the flawed controls and just the way it is all working out. It's kind of really annoying. There is some subtlety to it here and there, and I think if you go, and I went and played again on a higher difficulty, you can get a little bit more of it and you can understand it a little more, but it still just all does not quite line right up for me, and I think I was really expecting more. I think at this point we've all played, and you know, bigger games, smaller games, we've all played so many games where you are a swordsman badass with a good parry and some good attacks and stuff. It just should feel at least a certain level, and Trek to Yomi for me didn't quite do that. And that's crazy. Like, you might think I'm crazy because I'm still recommending that I think you should check it out if you like this type of thing, despite one of the main pillars of the game, the combat, which you're doing a lot, is not that great, because I still just think the overall package is really cool, really special. And again, it's pretty cheap and it's pretty short, and sometimes I just like these bite-sized experiences. And if you have something like Xbox Game Pass, I'm not shilling or anything for it, but if you have it, that means you can just try this game, really not really much risk involved. I don't know. Like I said, it's a tricky one to talk about. I might sound like a little bit of a downer, but overall, I still think it is so cool. There are parts of this game where you square up against another samurai in a room, and it just looks so cool. It's like, like, holy shit. Like, this game, a lot of the way it's constructed is a dream. It's just ultimately executing a lot of those killings of those dudes that isn't as cool. But still, I finished it, and as much as by the end I was so annoyed and just like kind of wanted to get the combat over with, I still ended up loading up a new game and playing again on the harder difficulty because I just like the way this simple story is told. I like looking at it. I played some on my Steam Deck, then I played some on the big screen, and it is very cool to see. Definitely recommend not playing it on a small screen because sometimes the character will be very small on screen. But ultimately, I just think I want to see more from this developer. Like, if they made another one, I would play it. The way this game is constructed, the style, the look, the story, the presentation, the way it all, like everything, just the fact that they nailed that, at least, I think is good enough where I want to see more. I want them to do another one of these. I just generally, that's also, again, my bias. I like games of this subgenre, and I want to see more. So I would love to see a Trek to Yomi 2 or whatever these developers make next if they do a similar style of gameplay, because most of it was pretty cool. It was short and sweet and well-paced, and that's really it. But that's Trek to Yomi. I've been playing a review copy for a couple of days, but it is out now, so if you're jumping in, it is pretty quick, so if you play through it, I would love to hear what you think, especially if you're like me, you're a fan of this type of game. I don't know what we would really call it. I think we may have talked about that in a previous video, but yeah, Trek to Yomi. Let me know where you're playing it. Let me know what you think of it if you did jump in. Are you like me where you 50% love it and 50% really don't like it? This is what we do here. Talk about games and stuff. So I want to know what you guys are thinking. And if this helped you out or informed you or anything, consider hanging out, clicking the like button, subscribing, all that stuff. I'm Jake Baldino. Thanks for being here. Subscribe because video games, pizza's on me.